So, Scorpio, your February 2026 forecast on the screen, your event chart. Your two rulers are very close together as we go into this month, Mars and Pluto. Now, Pluto has been in the sign of Aquarius full time since November 2024. But Mars is a recent addition, and what you can get with Mars and Pluto together is quite a combustible conjunction, because the sign of Aquarius inherently has a tension. On one hand, Aquarius is about being progressive, and it's about welcoming change because of its modern ruler of Uranus. But its traditional ruler of Saturn is very much about keeping things steady Eddie. So you could find yourself as you come into this month with these two so closely together, thinking a lot about where you live, how you live there. But your emotional world could feel a little bit more turbulent. And if someone does say something that you find is unfair, maybe it could be a little bit triggering too. Because, Scorpio, as this month goes on, the sun is going to receive the moon. On the 17th, we have a solar eclipse, the first in the sign of Aquarius for 8 years, but it is in a tense right angle, ironically, with the modern ruler of the sign of Uranus. And that has been shaking things up for you, all but the 4 months last year in Gemini in your sector of relating. So full time since March 2019, if there has been lots of changes around connections to others, it really wouldn't be a surprise. Now, it could have been in a very exciting and positive way, drawn towards people who are fresh, innovative or different, and that may have brought some real ups, but equally there may have been some sudden changes or some dislocations or uncertainties around involvements and relationships. But this fourth house energy that Pluto has been evoking, it began first in March 2023, asking you to become much more aware of what may need to evolve at the root of your world. And yet when you came into this year, your everyday communicational sector was absolutely on fire. And you may have had some very exciting and engaging conversations until this part of the year, but now you're being asked to think more about your emotions, about your home, family, and your immediate environment. Now, in a very positive way, Venus continues in Aquarius and starts this month in a conjunction with Mercury. If you do work from home or spend some of your working week at home, that's an excellent combination, pushing you perhaps to just make sure that you can be that much more settled or organised about how you conduct your role. Equally, if you have thought about working from home or offering services in your local community, that's a sparkling alliance which can help you to feel very enthusiastic about the possibilities. But later on the 1st of February, the moon moves out of your sister water sign of Cancer and into the proud Leo. But for you, that's very visible. And over the following 2 weeks of the influence of the full moon, however much there's this welter of energy in this more inward or foundational or emotional part of your chart, the full moon is activating the more public facing part of your situation. So whatever you're feeling could end up being much more out there perhaps than you want, because I feel that Scorpio people can be very pointed in their observations of others, very to the point, sometimes to the point of being blunt, but it may be that other people make observations on you, and that could be a little uncomfortable. The other thing that can come up from this full moon is the classic work-life balance scenario, which I know that we're all involved with pretty well every day. So we have all this technology, all these labour-saving devices, that if you go back to when I was a kid, my mum would be there in the kitchen on a Monday and using the hand wringer to put the clothes through, because Monday was wash day and everything was very metronomic. Tuesday was bread day, Wednesday was the pot man day, and so forth. But now we order stuff online, we have our mobile phones to find out what the weather's doing before we set out for a walk or a drive. It all sounds hunky-dory, but we seem to have less time all the time. And I think that you may find that if you're not getting enough time to focus on the foundational roots of your world, particularly around home and family, that may be something that you may need to address through the first 2 weeks of this month. Now, Uranus, ironically, considering we've been talking about him, does end a retrograde, which began on the 6th of September on the 4th. And that's good. It did start that retrograde initially in the buzzy Gemini, but went back into Taurus. But it is going to come into conflict with the Sun in week 3, but more of that shortly, in a very constructive and positive way for you. Even if you are dealing or attending to some tender issues early in the month, by the 6th, Mercury moves into one of its most playful locations for you, the 5th house, which can bring its sense of mischief to life. But the host, Pisces, is not Mercury's favourite location, and that can create some confusion. It is followed on the 10th by the lovely seductive energies of Venus. And Venus in the 5th house is very glamorous, and also it's exalted there, and they're joined by the Sun on the 18th. So as this month goes on, this inward, more sensitive or even defensive energy of earlier in the month makes way for a more playful, outgoing and interactive, perhaps even romantic vibe. But before that begins, we do have, perhaps for some astrologers, the biggest news of the month, in that Saturn returns to Aries. If you recall, from the 25th of May last year to the 1st of September, you may have experienced a greater sense of responsibility or obligation. Your physical vitality may have also felt a little lower, and that was because of Saturn moving through Aries. Aries is also the first zodiac sign, so in terms of the symbolism, Saturn returning there for a new, around about 29-year journey, because we've had that initial visit, that is going to be a new beginning for all of us. But Saturn is very much about what's already in existence, so it can be about boundaries, it can be about limitations, and Aries doesn't like those things. It likes to be much more go-getting. So there is resistance that's going to be forged, and of course it is meeting again with Neptune, which moved back into Aries on the 26th of January, and in fact they come into a conjunction on the 20th of this month exactly. But that Saturn, I think if you're not enjoying your work, for example, Saturn's going to push you to change it. If you have got some approaches to your personal care, your exercise regime or lack of it, if you're a born-again couch potato, Saturn's going to ask you to try to change that. If you're in a job which is as dull as the proverbial ditch water, Saturn will ask you to change that. If you're not really converting an idea that's been important to you over the last couple of years of Saturn being with Neptune in your 5th house, apart from last year, Saturn's asking you now to find the refinements, the detail, to make it gain traction. So it's a big news story for sure, not least it is linking to your modern ruler Pluto. So even if you're evolving something to do with those routines, it could be around your home and emotional life. But on the 17th, we have the first of a new eclipse series in Aquarius, and the first for 8 years. But it clashes bitterly with Uranus, and Uranus and the Sun are in tension all of week 3. If there's someone close to you, it may be a partner, it could be a family member, maybe it's a colleague who you don't feel is very attuned to your inner world, but has some unpredictabilities in their approach, that could be very unsettling. Then again, it may be you who feels very restless about where you live, the people you live with. If you've got flatmates, suddenly it can all feel like it's closing in. So the inner world that starts this month so powerfully is going to be highlighted not just over the next 6 months of the eclipse itself, but because of the North Node, the point of destiny, returning to Aquarius, the true node, on the 26th of July, you've got about a 1.5 year, 2 year period where how you feel about things, your home and emotional life, is going to come much more to the centre of your situation. So though in the latter part of this particular month you do have Mercury, Venus and the Sun all lighting up the most social, playful and fun part of your chart, it all has to feel right. And where things don't feel right, those tensions can definitely be heightened. But as I mentioned, on the 18th, we do have the Sun moving into Pisces, and it's a great location for you personally because the Sun in the 5th house is an echo of its rulership of Leo. So it is about warmth, it is about affection. And where you are enjoying it, and it does feel right, that can inject some delight into the latter part of this month. But if you are going on a date with someone new from the 26th, Mercury is retracing its steps, and as we know, Mercury retrogrades can cause mischief, but they can also create opportunities, and that doesn't tend to get out there. If you have got talents, flair and artistry that's not really being used, how can you apply it better? And that's the question that Mercury retrograde in Pisces asks you. Now, in the last phase of this month, your traditional ruler Mars clashes with Uranus, but this could be way more tense than even the Sun square with Uranus through that solar eclipse. Because when Uranus first moved into Taurus in the middle of May 2018, he clashed with Mars. If we think about it, Mars is about action, assertion, it's the warrior planet, can be about where we fight, and Uranus is where we want to be free. It's going to be in part of your chart to do with your relationships through to the 26th of April, Uranus, and Mars is in the part of your chart where he can frankly be a bit prickly. Mars in the 4th house is rather like Mars in Cancer, defensive. And just be aware if you're inclined to be like that. Fortunately, there's an extremely positive, very lucky potentially link between Venus and Jupiter as this month comes to a close, and equally also Mercury and Venus come into a conjunction despite Mercury's retrograde. So there is definite territory for very positive things to happen, but I think all this 4th house energy that you come into this month with is really asking you to become much more conscious about how things feel. Now, if you're someone who's really invested in personal development, you've had counselling, you watch a lot of videos to understand what makes you tick, I think you'll embrace this month very successfully. If you're someone who's very resistant to all those themes and perhaps feels a bit edgy when vulnerabilities are come to the fore, I think you will find it more challenging. But you're also the Scorpio that's going to gain most if you do engage with the energies this month, which can at times be very tense, sudden, erratic, but they could push you to look at something. Maybe, for example, where you live. If you're living somewhere which just isn't right for you, and maybe your decision to live there is based on an economic reason, it may be because you've always lived in that area, it may be what other people expect of you, but if it's not working, it's an opportunity to change. But with Pluto there, the change doesn't have to be a physical move in, it could be through a renovation, it could be through changing the house around, it could be through even decluttering. Uranus really appreciates the degree of space, so an adaptation can be just as powerful to a relocation. I hope you have a great February, and goodbye. Thank you so much for joining me. Please do like, hype or comment the video. If you've yet to subscribe, do so now. And please also join me at patrickarundel.com. We've made even more changes to the website and it's really coming together now. If you've yet to order your personal forecast for the next 12 months, please see the link below and get half price, 50% off.